The St. Louis Cardinals just finished up a 3-game series in Chicago and another up-and-down performance. Katie Wu of The Athletic dropped an article on Sunday after assembled media met with John Mozeliak to address the direction the team could go at this year's trade deadline. We'll get into that and much more on this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast.
Smith corks one into right, down the line. It may go. Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Breeze hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
This is the Viva Albertos podcast on SB Nation.
Welcome into another episode of the Viva Albertos podcast, joined tonight by site manager Heather and writer Gabe Simons. I am your host, Jake Wood. Guys, things are going to even out eventually, I'm sure, but the last week was a tough stretch for this team after being a season-high 9 games over 500. And, you know, as we record now, the Cardinals are currently getting their butts kicked on Sunday Night Baseball by the Chicago Cubs. It looks pretty inevitable that the team is going to wind up leaving Chicago losing 2 of 3. Gabe, I'll start with you on this. What is there to be taken out of this, road trip this weekend? They still wound up going 4-5 this week, but I don't know. It feels like the losses were a lot harder to take this week than in weeks past.
Well, for starters, it happened against the Pirates. That's always rough. The Pirates are perennial bottom dwellers, and they probably will be this year again. And when you don't score a single run in a 3-game series against them, you start to look inward at yourself and maybe think, maybe we should sell at the deadline, because do good teams really do that? And on a technical level, occasionally that does happen to good teams, but I think it's absolutely because of the Pirates. And then obviously they're going to get blown out twice in 3 games against the Cubs. That's never really a good look. I got a lot of flack when I wrote the first series preview for the Cubs and said that it was a season-defining series. What I really meant was the 7 games against the Cubs were season-defining, and if that's anything to go by, the what it's telling us is this might not be the year. And I don't know. I'm honestly kind of annoyed that we're apparently tied for the 3rd wild card until we lose tonight. Just because this is kind of what people, I'll give credit to people who are like, this is the worst case scenario where we're somewhere in between, like being actually good and should sell, and we're probably not going to sell, and we're probably not going to end up making the playoffs. And it's kind of like the exact middle ground that a lot of people were afraid of. And it kind of seems like that's where we're headed, in my opinion.
Yeah, Heather, your thoughts on the road trip overall?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It seemed like, I think the timing of it is not ideal. You kind of want the team to have something positive leading up to the All-Star break and the trade deadline. So I think the closer and the higher stakes the games get, the more devastating the losses feel. But then there's also the Pirates of it all, where the Pirates aren't very good this season, and they got swept. And in the way they got swept and not scoring any runs is not fun baseball to watch. So
sure.
overall, it's just a more brutal loss, I think. So I think that's why it feels worse. Yeah.
I think there are certain parts like contextualized that matter in this kind of conversation. So the first thing that I will mention is, the Cardinals offensively are very banged up right now. We've seen more than enough games than we had anticipated. Garrett Hampson has started. We've seen Joel Pozo get starts. Now, that's not as unusual, but tonight on Sunday Night Baseball against an all-star starter, you have Joel Pozo batting 5th and DHing whenever he wasn't even on the roster to start the season, and was a late signing in spring training, and is a really nice feel-good story, and we're all super thrilled to have him. But aside as far as expectations go, Jose Fermin has started a game in the outfield. Thomas Ajacey is starting a lot of games, and his production has left a lot to be desired since his recall this previous time. And so, being without staple names like Nolan Arenado, and I know that Wilson Contreras has returned for this Cubs series, but he really hasn't done much. You're without Ivan Herrera, who is inarguably your most potent bat in the entire lineup, and his absence is clearly being felt from an offensive standpoint. Just Jordan Walker, I know that he has had his ups and downs and deep craters in terms of those downs, but we did see that kind of 3-week stretch where he was able to put it together at the end of May, and it started to look like, wow, this could actually be something that we can build off of, and then he got hurt again. So, injuries are playing a factor here, and I think that for the Pirates series, that was an anomaly. Like, you don't expect that to happen, and them coming off of a 3-game series sweep against the New York Mets, where clearly their confidence was like sky high, and then they went and played the Mariners this weekend, and they got shut out in at least 2 of the games. I don't know if they scored a run on Friday or not, but they lost the last 2 games today and yesterday 1-0, both games. So their offense fell flat on its face again, and they kind of returned back to normal, or kind of came back to earth. But I got the same feeling when I was watching the Pirates series and the Blue Jays series, but for a little bit of a different way, that it was like, clearly the Cardinals are catching this team at their high, at one of their hottest marks of the season. And so it's just kind of like, it's not about who you play often, it's about when you play them. And that kind of felt applicable to, the Pirates series, much like, the Blue Jays are just a really good team, and they found a way to battle back and beat you in those games. And like that, it was different, but in the same sense that, you're catching this team at a really hot time, and it's about when you're playing them. So, for that, I kind of wrote that series off a little bit, and I kind of didn't get too low after that series. And Gabe, we talked about this you talked about the 7-game stretch with the Cubs being a very season defining type stretch. And the Cardinals, even after they lose today, will still be 3-4 against the first place Cubs. And all of those games, I believe, were without Ivan Herrera. This entire weekend was basically without Nolan Arenado. I don't know how many starts they had against Miles Michaelis and Eric Fetty, but I would assume that by the end of July, whenever the Cardinals play them next, I don't have that in front of me, but it will be a different group than what they have seen so far in late June, early July right now. So I wouldn't completely write off what that could look like in the future. But kind of transitioning away from this recent stretch, looking back, we're going to start to look forward. Let's talk about Katie Woo, friend of the show, of The Athletic, wrote an article this weekend, kind of detail. The assembled media had the opportunity to kind of meet with Mo and kind of get his sense of where the Cardinals are right now, and kind of what they're looking for, what kind of decisions they're interested in making. So we're going to kind of run through this article a little bit, and I'll just pull out kind of some snippets, and we'll kind of just react to what Mo is saying here. And Gabe, as we get, Mo said, as we get closer to the 31st, that's really where we'll be trying to decide. I do feel like where we are in the week leading up, or the 72 hours leading up to the trading deadline, may affect how we make our decisions. So when you hear that, Gabe, it's obvious that Mo has not made any type of decision on a direction yet. He's still waiting to see more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I believe this article was written before the Cup series. And I don't know if I don't think the Cup series would have, changed what he would have said. But yeah, I mean, that's the way to play it anyway, right? We still have 20-ish games until the deadline, and for all we know, they'll go on a 20-game winning streak. I mean, probably not, but especially with Michaelis and Fetty apparently not getting kicked out of the rotation. But yeah, I mean that's people are going to get annoyed if Mosaic isn't very clear about what they want to do at the deadline. But that I mean, especially where we're at, that's how you got to play it. You got to wait until almost the last minute and then commit one way or the other, I think. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I'm just really hoping we're not like tied with three other. Right now, we're tied with three other teams for the third wild card. I hope we're not in that position at the deadline. I would rather it be a lot more clear than that. Um, whether that be more games back of the wild card or like more games ahead of other teams, but like that's like I really don't like that position at all because that there's too many teams, too few spots available, and as long as they man, I don't know. I just I'm really worried about the deadline now at this point because I'm obviously a little bit downbeat after the Cup series, but I'm worried that we're gonna be like a game back of the third wild card and not sell anybody. And I feel like you kind of got to sell at that point. That's just my opinion though.
For accuracy's sake, Mo is with the team in Chicago, so this did take place, I believe, yesterday. This meeting with assembled media. So,
Oh, okay. Well, was it before yesterday's win, I guess, probably?
yes, I believe so. That they met with Mo before the game yesterday.
Okay. Well, yeah, like I said, I
Yeah.
don't think his words would have changed at all,
No.
but
Uh,
I mean,
So
continue.
jumping ahead to the next snippet, right now, Mo says, right now, we're just not confident with what's behind McGreevy, speaking of the rotation, to pull him up, referring to the lack of pitching depth available in AAA. As we navigate the next 3 to 4 weeks, certainly there are going to be opportunities to get Michael up here at some point. Worst case scenario for him, there is a clear path for him sometime in August. Mo goes on to say he pitched really well, and he's deserving, and hopefully the opportunity is there. So Heather, I'll ask you this in this type of context.
Okay.
Do you think after tonight's third straight blow up from Eric Fetty that Michael McGreevy will take Eric Fetty's spot in the rotation going forward? Because McGreevy started today. I want to make this highlighted and known. McGreevy also started today on turn with Eric Fetty. So he would then be on normal rest. Actually, he might be extra rest because the team has off days coming up, 2 off days, one tomorrow and then one Friday, I think that might be. I know they have 2 off days before the trade deadline. Maybe it's Thursday.
No,
Tuesday,
they just have one off day.
They have one off day? Okay. They have an off day. So McGreevy would be pitching on normal rest, and he is eligible to be recalled on Tuesday. That would be the minimum 15 days that the player has to be down after being optioned. Do you think after today's blow up with Eric Fetty that McGreevy will be called up and take Eric Fetty's place in the rotation going forward?
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Um, I don't see why not. Well, like, why not? Why not try it? Because either way, if you're if you're a team that's trying to win now, or if you're a team that's trying to see what you have in some of your younger guys, that is a move I think that makes sense to do because you're not maybe at worst it's a lateral move with how Fetty's been pitching. And it's not just even these recent blowups. I think I think I wrote about this. Um, was it the post I wrote? Al from Bleed Cubby Blue reaches out to me to write a brief preview for their site for him to post, and I wrote one that compared the Cardinals to different uh founding fathers.
Interesting.
Yeah. And let's see. What was well that's let me see. I can't remember what Fetty was. Um Thomas Paine, maybe.
Oh,
I
no.
think I compared him to Thomas Paine. Because I said um I said he's bringing a volatile mix of promise and panic. Like
I
as
mean, the
pain
name is
lit
quite
revolu-
apropos. It's like pain watching him pitch. So
as pain lit revolutionary fires and occasionally burned bridges, much like Petty, whose 4.66 FIP and .255 average against, which was a lot lower than I thought it was going to be, rides the line between liberation and collapse. He could let the defense behind him inspire, or he could implode, and there's no in between.
yeah, I don't
I
think there's
called it.
been truer words spoken.
I absolutely nailed it. I just had to call it out because and then in the post from last week, I think I said, his ERA mysterious. So, so it hasn't just been these last few games. I think it's been kind of a season-long thing where it's like I don't know how his results aren't worse. This seems to be kind of the what is it the hens coming to roost
Yeah.
sort of thing. The regressing to the mean, I believe, is the actual expression.
The metrics
Because
had been suggesting all season long that he was outperforming what he was actually producing, and so
Yeah.
yes, this is him simply it's the league figuring getting ahead of that curve, and so
hmm And so this is like a long-winded way of saying why not? Why
Yeah.
not try something else?
And to your point, you said that McGreevy both will give you a more competitive start, you would assume, and on top of that, it fits for the future, right? And when you think about Eric Fetty, he doesn't accomplish either of those things at this current juncture. He's not helping you win games, and he's not here beyond this season. And so he does. When the Cardinals set out this season, their two main points were to try to compete and to try to, build in runway for the future. Well, Eric Fetty does not fit either of those runway, quote unquotes. So it really makes the most sense that if you're not getting one or the other from him, then he doesn't fit and he doesn't make any sense on this roster. And that's nothing personal against Eric Fetty. He was a great dude whenever I got to meet him at winter warm-up, and I hope for his future success, but it's not working here in St. Louis. And so what's probably best for the Cardinals and best for Fetty is probably for this to have been his final start as a Cardinal, so that way McGreevy can get enough runway so we can kind of have an understanding of what he is going forward, and so that way we have someone who potentially gives us a more competitive opportunity to stay and win ball games rather than what we've been experiencing the last at least 4 to 5 starts from Fetty. There were 5 or 6 beyond that that he at least was keeping the Cardinals in games, but you were sitting there with visions of John Gant of past playing in front of you, and you're sitting here going, how is he doing this? How is he doing this? And I hope that Cardinals front office of the future take note of this type of profile, that we've now seen this twice within the last 4 to 5 years of this will always blow up. This profile is a ticking time bomb, and you need to get out before it explodes. So those are my thoughts on that.
I have a question.
Sure.
Related. What would be the corresponding move for McGreevy?
You could either send down a bullpen guy and put Fetty in the bullpen, or you could put Fetty on the injured list. I don't know what the injury is, or you could just give him his papers.
Designate him for assignment, yeah. And then that gives the Cardinals a 10-day window through the All-Star break, I believe, roughly, to find a trade partner for him, or he would be granted his outright release.
And I just
what
want
do
you
you
to
think?
know, I wish we had video, because I've been aggressively nodding my head through everything you guys have said.
Yeah.
So I wish we had video, because the whole time I just
We're getting there, Gabe. I promise.
Everything you guys have been saying, I've just been nodding my head. I've been like, this would be good for video, because I have nothing to say, but I'm just agreeing with everything you're saying.
So with that, from the Cardinals rotation, kind of segueing over to the opponent's rotation, Gabe, I'll throw this one back over to you. Mo was quoted when asked about the opportunity to add a right-handed bat. He said, "We've been struggling against left-handed pitching, so that's frustrating. But knowing we're going to get Herrera back at some point, Nolan is a little banged up, Contreras is a little banged up. I do feel like where they're going to be in a week or two is not a glaring hole in terms of trading deadline thoughts. But he did go on to say, we have been able to create a lot of opportunity for the guys we wanted to see go play. We've had consistent starting pitching. We've had a lot of churn in our bullpen, but our key roles have been relatively consistent and effective. As you approach the trading deadline, usually it's all about having to find more pitching. I think as we stand here today, it's, are we going to have the ability to score runs consistently? So Gabe, the question I'll ask to you is, do you think it would be helpful to add a right-handed bat, or do you think that the Cardinals currently have enough offense in-house that could carry them through to a playoff run?
Ooh, that's a tricky. First off, I'll say I don't necessarily agree with what he said. I think if you're talking about what would prevent us from getting to the playoffs, it's clearly that 2 of the 5 rotation spots are terrible right now. Nonetheless, I would say here's the tricky thing is it depends on it, like, are we giving runway or are we like really going for the playoffs? Because if it's runway, I don't really think they should do anything, to be honest, because you want to give Shajacy some at bats and you want to give I kind of want to see, Gorman against some lefties. I mean, and he's getting some starts against lefties. He didn't start today, which is probably good because Boyd is a tough matchup.
Yep.
But they would clearly need another right-handed bat, but like, how much are they going to pay for it? Because if it's like a Tommy Pham type bat, I mean, I don't really think that's going to transform the offense that much, and I don't think they should or will give up huge pieces for a right-handed bat that will actually make a difference. So I find it difficult to answer that question because I don't know what a marginal-ish bat who can hit lefties that also doesn't cost that much that will improve our lineup against lefties. That's a very tough needle to thread. And part of me kind of just thinks, let's just kind of roll with these guys. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
I think so. A couple players that come to mind in terms of like who they could target. One would be Mark Canha. If the Royals are continuing to kind of trend in the wrong direction, it's historically been a solid right-handed bat, can hit lefties well. You don't necessarily need to play him every day, but he fits in well in a good role. The other name is if the Arizona Diamondbacks decide to sell. Man, Randall Grichuk just destroys left-handed pitching. And what would the cost be for either of those options? I'm sure Canha would cost you less. But what would the Cardinals be willing to give up for somebody who has the ability to make a true difference, like to your point, Gabe, to where it's tangibly effective, like a Randall Grichuk? What would Arizona want in return for that, and what would the Cardinals be willing to pay for that? Those are kind of questions that obviously only Mo and the front office can answer. But those would be a couple of names to kind of look at in that direction.
Grichuk, I'm okay with that, although that's sort of in the Pham realm, I think. I think Canha, I used to have him in fantasy. I don't think he has huge splits, and he's having a terrible year. Yeah, he's actually been worse against lefties in his career than righties.
Has he? I always thought of him as a guy who handled lefties as a right-handed hitter.
I mean, he has almost equal splits, to be clear, but the weighted runs created plus is slightly worse against lefties, and his season stats are very bad. I don't know if you knew that. He's betting.
Well, then he'd come cheap. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like fit, right? So when you're talking about rental right-handed bat that could easily, or fairly easily be acquired.
Let me just say his stats. He's betting 220, 281 on base percentage, 275 slugging, negative 0.6 WAR on Fangraphs. Just
Who is this?
This is Mark Canha.
Mark. Okay, so I missed. I was looking at Randall Grichuk's stats and I missed the other name. I'm like, Randall Grichuk still playing?
I wouldn't mind getting Canha. I don't think he will cost anything, but I don't think he would really change the lineup at all, to be honest. I mean, he's in the Pham category for me, where you kind of hope he catches fire, and maybe it'll make a difference, but which is why I don't mind it just to throw something else on the table. And me personally, I would sit Burleson against lefties. I know he's now a full-time starter against lefties. I don't know if you guys noticed that his season stats against lefties are still not good. I don't know
Yeah,
why. Like he
I
had
know
like a brief
that.
he had a brief 2 week period where they were good, but right now, and today's not included, I don't think he got a hit today. He has a 77 weighted runs created plus against lefties, and obviously the rest of his career is worse than that. So I don't know where this idea that he's good against or okay against lefties, but he's still bad against lefties. So I wouldn't mind replacing Burley starts against lefties with Kana. I don't think that's going to happen though. I think Ollie's going to continue to play Burley against lefties. So
I think
that's
that's part of developing his runway, quote unquote, is seeing
But
if
he
he can do it against both sides.
But I mean, okay. I mean, I understand the point, but he can't really play defense, and the upside for me is just not worth playing him against lefties all the time because, well, maybe he could be league average against lefties, but I think that still makes him not a very good player when he faces lefties.
So a couple
But anyway,
other names that I have written on my little 2025 MLB trade board that I have written in my phone, because I'm a nerd and a psychopath and I do things like that in my spare time. Other names to watch would be he just got hurt, plantar fasciitis. I don't think it's likely that he would be dealt this year, but Lane Thomas of the Cleveland Guardians historically hits lefties pretty well. Ramon Laureano of the Baltimore Orioles, Michael Taylor of the White Sox, Tommy Pham of the Pirates. We all saw how that went last year. And then Austin Slater of the Chicago White Sox, right-handed bats that could be options. I really do think that Randall Grichuk would probably be the best of the bunch in terms of like expected impact from that group. But once again, what is the willing to pay cost for the Cardinals to accomplish that is something that I don't know that answer. But in terms of rental bats, that's kind of the best of the bunch. So let's transition over to talk about young players, and we have kind of been keeping tabs on this quote unquote runway. One thing in Katie's piece, one thing St. Louis will remain cognizant of if the decision is made to add, it is ensuring it won't come at the expense of others who figure to be pieces of next year's team and beyond. Players such as Lars Nootbaar, Alec Burleson, and Ivan Herrera, when healthy, will be priorities. Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker can also work their way back into that equation, and this suggests that if the Cardinals do shop the market, it would likely be for a rental bat. Mo is quoted in saying, "I don't think we're ever going to take away from these guys we're trying to see play." So, Heather, there's been kind of some fan speculation that perhaps the Cardinals could use a Nolan Gorman or a Jordan Walker. I know for you that's blasphemy to kind of go get whatever the Cardinals kind of needed for their roster, but it doesn't appear that Mo is all that interested in doing something like that. Your thoughts on his thoughts there?
I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. I'm not, like I've said before, I'm not entirely willing to give up on Jordan Walker just yet. I think he's like 22 years old, which I think at this point, a 22-year-old would be in AAA. So I think we're watching him figure stuff out at the big league level, which is a lot harder to do. Um, so I'm not quite willing to give up on him just yet. And I think it makes sense to, because like we said before, this is kind of the same thinking with bringing up McGreevy. It's like either way, if you're gonna go for it, or if you're gonna see what you have in these young players, I think it makes sense to see what those players have versus using them to get a rental. Uh, there's just not. I don't know how much impact a player you could trade for with these players that are probably at their lowest possible value right now that they've been at. I just don't know. Even if you wanted to trade them, like, is this the right time to do that with them? You getting your lowest possible return. Uh, I think that just makes a lot of sense to just chill.
For sure. No, and to your point, with the Cardinals and where they are, I think that Katie has been on record quite a few times and has speculated that the Cardinals could kind of try to look to do similarly to what the Tigers did last season and trading away rentals like a Jack Flaherty and who was the lefty that they traded? His name escapes me. Cardinals fans wanted him forever. Left-handed reliever. I'll think of his name after we're done recording. But anyway, they sold off pieces at the deadline and replaced those pieces with younger players who then filled in, and the team stepped up together as a unit and led them to the playoffs. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and lie to Cardinals fans and say that if the Cardinals sell two of their players, that they're going to wind up being, in the NLCS the way that the Tigers were. Like ALDS. I'm sorry, Cleveland was in the ALCS. But my point withstanding, I don't see that being a one-to-one parallel. The Cardinals obviously don't have a Tarek Skubal at the top of their rotation. Sonny Gray's great. He's not Tarek Skubal, let's be honest. And outside of that, the Tigers just have a better group offensively. Now, where I do think that could benefit the Cardinals is kind of to Gabe's point earlier, is that if you are able to shake out an Eric Fetty and a Miles Michaelis from your rotation and fill those spots with guys who actually give you an opportunity to win on an every fifth day basis, you can kind of see how the team could kind of go on a roll. And the mentality that they have pretty consistently of like they're never out of any game, and they have done a pretty good job in a lot of games and coming back, getting that consistent starting pitching to keep them in ball games, so that way whenever they are able to kind of strike and make their move in any given game, that benefits that kind of model. So, I mean, you could kind of squint and see the idea, but I don't know that it's necessarily one-to-one with like what the Tigers were able to do last year. And hell, if the Cardinals made it to the NLDS, I think a lot of Cardinals fans would be really happy with that based off of how the last two seasons have gone and kind of the up and down nature of how this season has gone as well. So talking about that a little bit though, Gabe, in that same umbrella, if the Cardinals do buy, to what degree will it be? And Mozeliak will look to thread the needle here. He was quoted in saying, when we talk about all in, I do think based on where the franchise is, based on payroll down and thinking more of the long view, we're still trying to balance today's success with ultimately having long-term success, he explained. Cardinals ownership tabbed 2025 as a recession season, citing an expected drop in ticket sales and gate revenue, along with cuts from their restructured television deal with Diamond Sports. But Mozeliak believes that shouldn't impact deadline spending. And he has been quoted in saying that, if the Cardinals were to look to add salary, that is something that he believes if the Cardinals are in playoff position to do so, that ownership would not stand in the way of them, or I should say, okay, that additional spending to kind of bring in something that helps them.
I mean, I expect minor. I mean, I understand he says that ownership is willing to have like pick up salary, I guess, of a player that they might pick up. But I mean, I'm kind of skeptical that they're gonna get anybody who like the only name I could think of, but this is not what I mean. But like in years past, if we like traded for a Scherzer, like that would not. I don't think that anything close to that's on the table. Yeah, I mean, and I don't think it's the wrong approach necessarily, but I feel like any move they make will be relatively minor. Maybe a bullpen arm, maybe a guy who can hit lefties like Grichuk or something. I don't know if I guess maybe a starting pitcher, but I don't know what that looks like. Because they clearly don't feel comfortable handing the reins. And I don't necessarily disagree, even though, there's some fans who just want to throw the AAA guys there no matter what. But I don't necessarily disagree that like Tekoa Roby, it's a little early for him. He's got innings concerns. He's been okay in AAA, but I'm more worried about like how many innings he could realistically throw. So I don't know that he would help with the rotation that much. And Quinn Matthews, he last I checked, I think he had a recent start, but he had more walks and strikeouts in AAA. He might have fixed that with his last start, but that doesn't strike me as somebody who's particularly close to somebody I want to promote.
Right.
And the flip side of that is also that Matthews is, for better or worse, does not have to be added to the 40-man roster at the end of the season. So unless he like proves himself to be somebody you want to promote to the majors, why would you unnecessarily put a 40-man spot, lock up a 40-man spot, so to speak,
Right.
with all the tough decisions the Cardinals might have over the offseason? It's not even a debate so far. If Matthews actually starts pitching well, okay, then we can have that conversation. So it's pretty much just McGreevy. So I kind of understand where he's coming from that aspect, where he doesn't really want to, release somebody, I guess, is probably what he really means, with just McGreevy being the depth pitching wise. But I mean, I feel like they need to move on from Michaelis and Fetty. So maybe that looks like a starter who can throw 5 innings and allow 2 or 3 runs per game, which they lately have not been able to do. So, I mean, I would not expect anything major if they do buy. And we'll see if that's pretty much it. I don't think it's going to be anything major. Honestly.
Can I give you a name?
Go ahead.
Quietly for the Chicago White Sox this season, Adrian Hauser has had a really solid season, and I think that he, in terms of acquisition cost, wouldn't cost you a whole lot. And I think that he would give you, that every 5th day opportunity to win, whereas, Michaelis and Fetty have not. If the Cardinals don't feel like TK Roby or Quinn Matthews are in a spot where they can help or contribute going forward, and I know that will be the pushback for some fans who are just like, what's the point of adding another veteran? We should be seeing what these kids can do at the major league level. If they're not ready, you're actually going to hinder their development more. And so it would be best to have, an option that doesn't block them long term. So just a rental option to kind of get you through the season, but also give you that competitive opportunity. So I'm sure that you were looking up his numbers this season, yeah. Gabe. Adrian Hauser.
I'm not opposed, and although I'm a little afraid of buying high on 8 starts, but since last year's below replacement level, I can't imagine like 8 starts actually drives this price up to something where you have to give up a legit prospect. And he looks like the good version of Fetty, basically.
He's on the ground a lot. He does a lot of things that the veteran starters that you would hope for do. He's not going to cost you a ton, but can he help you, get 5 innings of 3 runs or less, give them a chance to be in the game and win? That's kind of what you're hoping for in terms of like getting an Adrian Hauser here. There's not a lot of names that I have written down here that I think are at least within play for the Cardinals. I don't know how you would feel about like Trevor Williams or Mike Soroka from the Nationals, Cal Quantrill from the Marlins, who I know his numbers are inflated, but I looked it up since like the very his April was just awful, but since the beginning of May, he has like a sub-4 ERA, so he's pitching pretty solidly. I don't think that he would cost you all that much. I don't know that the Cardinals want to go reclamation project, or else maybe like a Tanner Houck or an Alek Manoah might make a modicum of sense, but I don't really necessarily think that you could get those guys for all that cheap. But
I mean, it might end up being something like that deadline where we traded for Lester and J-Hap, I think.
Yeah.
And, who did we trade?
We gave up John Gant, yeah, and then we also gave up our Lane Thomas.
One of those people being John Gant is hilarious, given you compared Fetty to John Gant.
Funny how we've come full circle, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, something like that makes sense, honestly. Like where we all kind of made fun of it at the time when we got Hap and Lester, and then we got in the playoffs.
And then it stabilized everything exactly kind of like where the Cardinals need. Yeah, it's very interesting how these two seasons seem to parallel each other.
Yeah, so I mean that is something I would be fine with, because I'm honestly tired of watching Miles Michaelis and Eric Fetty pitch, and just constantly being down like 4-0 before the offense gets going.
It's
Which,
non-competitive. Yeah.
yeah, and I think like, there's obviously a human aspect to baseball, and I think when their starters are just instantly just getting crushed, I feel like
everyone
it has
gets
to make
down on
some kind of
themselves. Yeah.
impact on how the offense performs. Like right now I think we're losing 11-0, but like if it was like a good pitching performance, do I think that we would automatically have 0 runs? Who knows, right? Like right now, like I don't know. It has to seep in at some level. I don't think they're like not trying or anything, but
No,
I
I'm
do.
fully with
Right.
you. I mean, you can't, you feel like you have to try to hit, a 5-run home run every single time you step up to the plate. Like that amount of pressure, and you start to press and come out of your approach, and things start to weigh on you in that aspect too. So there is a lot of validity to what you're saying, Gabe, in terms of like, once you just get down so far, it's kind of just like you can't really dig out of that hole. Like the guys at this level, like the Cubs pitchers are major league pitchers, and they're not going to surrender 12 runs to you, so it's pretty insurmountable at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
But the last little snippet that I'm going to touch on for us with us tonight, there's also a segment of the fan base who believes that regardless of performance this season, the Cardinals should sell and delve further into the runway and young players. Talking about Ryan Helsley, Steven Matz, and Phil Maton on expiring deals. These would obviously be the Cardinals' 3 most valuable chips that they could trade at this year's deadline. All traits they have traits that teams tend to seek out and often are willing to overpay for. But if St. Louis is also in contention, there could be hesitancy to move any of the 3. Mozeliak was quoted in saying, "It definitely would be a concern. Right now, I don't think we have intentions of doing that, but again, we'll see where we're at." If they aren't going to move a high-profile reliever, could they move a veteran starting pitcher? That would create an easy segue to bring McGreevy up permanently. So like we talked about with moving on from an Eric Fetty, whether or not he is able to be traded and actually get the Cardinals something, doubtful, but you never know until you throw it out there and see what kind of fish you might be able to catch. And then could the Cardinals capitalize on a return? Stating that Sonny Gray is somebody that they would not entertain trading under any circumstances either. So for the crowd out there that wants the Cardinals to simply just ditch all, hope of this season, it doesn't sound like the Cardinals are currently considering that. And I don't think the team is bad enough or will go through a stretch bad enough to make the Cardinals consider that. So it might be worth, reimagining your expectations of what this team is, because it doesn't sound as though the Cardinals are going to match up with where you are going to meet you in the middle there. So, Gabe, any final thoughts for our episode tonight as my voice is trying to hang on for dear life?
Yeah, I'm not a part of the sell no matter what crowd, but I will say I am very scared of being in between right now, and I feel like that's likely where we're going to be. And I'm hoping one way or the other by the deadline, it's a little bit clear one way or the other, whether that's we have a clear wild card spot in our hands, or we're like 3 or 4 games back to the third wild card, which I feel like if you're 3 to 4 back to the third wild card at that point, and then there's, 4 or 5 teams competing for that spot, I think at that point you got to just be like, okay, we're going to sell. And I'm hoping one way or the other, that's where we end up, either that or the other place. And I'm pretty sure though, we're going to be like a game back of the third wild card or something like that at the deadline. And we're going to hold pat, and hopefully they still end up making the playoffs though. Yeah, I remember when we lost, I think we got swept by the Cubs, or lost this important series of the Cubs before trading deadline a couple years ago, and that convinced them to buy instead of sell, and then they didn't make the playoffs, and that was great. But I'm hoping something like that doesn't happen to the Cardinals.
Yeah, to your point, I think that that's kind of what Mo is hoping for as well, is that over the next 2 to 3 weeks that the Cardinals themselves, separate themselves one way or the other, at least from the rest of the pack in terms of like the rest of the third wild card hopefuls, or they fall so far out that the decision is fairly non-complex in terms of like what direction to go in the future. I think if the Cardinals were stuck in the very same position they are today, I think there's a good chance that about 90% of the fan base would be unhappy with the direction that they would go. Heather, your final thoughts on just kind of everything that we talked about tonight, and then maybe any final thoughts over the next week or two.
Ooh, okay. I've been thinking about this a little bit, little introspective here, but life is short. It's real short. And I think this season has the potential to be really fun. It might not be the season everyone wants. It might not end up being a playoff bound team, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be a fun team. These past few games against the Cubs, even when they lost Friday and they're losing tonight, but you don't feel out of games like we have in the past. At least I don't. It's fun to just watch them. Like Saturday's game, they came back and then came back and won. And I don't know. It's hard to evaluate the team in Chicago too, because the ball seemed to be flying out of there. But I'm ready to just watch and kind of sit back and relax a little bit. Not that I'm doing any work anyway. They don't take advice from me. And I still have to evaluate them, but
I felt
I'm
like
just having fun.
At the beginning of your little spiel there, I needed some bongos and some snaps at the end. Life is short. Enjoy it. And so I felt like I was at a poetry reading there for a minute.
And we're kind of the season feels like playing with house money, right? Like we didn't expect
exactly.
Well,
that's the expectations.
That's the benefit of lowering expectations coming into the season, is that you have the ability to outperform those, and I think that's part of the idea. That's part of the idea of why Mo came out the very first day of the offseason and said that we're doing this and we're taking a step back, we're giving young players a chance to play, so that way if we're in this position where they're similar to the last couple of seasons, not quite World Series contender or bust, but they're good enough to potentially make it to the playoffs, that fans aren't as disappointed in this product. And I'm certain that there are fans out there that would have the sentiment to wonder what happened to their once great, proud franchise that was perennially in the NLCS. And brother, those days are over for now, but hopefully we'll get back to those one day. Yeah, we'll get back. We're gonna get back there eventually, but times are tough now.
It's been 3 seasons. Yeah. Oh my gosh. My 3-year-old doesn't know a Cardinals postseason.
That's right.
I'm not saying we're spoiled, but we're a little spoiled.
We're a little spoiled.
If they're not gonna make the playoffs, they can at least be fun, and they've been fun.
Like, not as good as Yankees fans though.
We don't talk about those people. Anyway, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking with a lot of great high-profile guests, so we wanted to make sure to hop on here and you guys get to just hear us talk for this episode. Next week, we will have an early release date on our episode. It will come out on either Saturday night or Sunday morning, the day before the day of the draft. We are going to be talking with our one of our resident prospect gurus and all things knower of the MLB draft, Kareem Hawk, and we will also have with us chief farm director personality person who directs young players for the site Prospects Live, Reese B. White, who is well known throughout the prospect community, to kind of talk about where the Cardinals are going to go at pick number 5, pick number 55, pick number 84, I believe, and maybe pick 103. I believe they have 4 picks on day 1. And so we'll kind of go over those picks, what the Cardinals might be looking to do, some of the players you might hear right around in that area. If not, the Cardinals select them themselves, just to kind of give you that draft preview. The week after that, we'll be coming off of the All-Star break. We will be talking to Belleville News Democrat writer for the St. Louis Cardinals, Jeff Jones. After that, we will be talking with the Baseball Insider boys, National Baseball Insider Robert Murray of Fansided, who broke the Rafi Devers trade, and much more he will have in his notebook for Cardinals fans as we enter this very interesting, somewhat tumultuous, somewhat exciting time for Cardinals fans, and all the uncertainty comes with the trading deadline and what he will be hearing at that time. And then from there, we'll be at trade deadline week, and I have yet to secure a guest for either that weekend after, but we assured you we will have great analysis from there and much more coming. For site manager Heather, for Gabe Simons, and for myself, I am your host, Jake Wood. Have a great night. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week on Draft Day, Draft Eve.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Please leave a rate and review on your favorite platform and turn on those bell notifications so you can be notified the moment our newest episode is released. As always, make sure to give us a follow on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Facebook. Just type in Viva Albertos on any platform to find us. Have a great day and thanks for listening.